This used to be our main editorial floor. This used to work 24 hours a day. And at any given time, you would have at least 20 journalists and 5 designers working here. This was the design department.
Tarun Tejpal is editor-in-chief of Tehelka, a news and current affairs website responsible for some of the most remarkable scoops in Indian journalism. Out of the 115 staff Tehelka used to employ, less than 10 unpaid now remain. Tehelka has been crushed by a relentless campaign of government harassment.
We had a terrific team, and I think we had this I think most of them had the kind of feeling crew members have when this ship is sinking, I think you think it's not going to sink, we'll get by.
This is the footage that rocked India's political establishment and earned Tehelka formidable enemies. Grainy pictures of high-ranking army officers gratefully accepting bribes.
Small gift for the New Year party.
The leader of India's ruling party pocketing another stack of cash. Posing as arms dealers, Tehelka's journalists stalked the corridors of power with hidden cameras, uncovering a network of graft. When their story was made public, it claimed the head of the defence minister and 2 party presidents. Now, Tehelka is paying the price for taking on the government of India.
The truth was, there were just 1 or 2 of us fighting this propaganda war, whereas the government was just deploying the entire establishment to not only witch hunt us. I mean, every agency of the government was unleashed on us: Enforcement Directorate, Intelligence Bureaus, CBI, Company Board, IRS, Income Tax. There was no agency of the government that was not unleashed on us.
Tehelka are buccaneer journalists. They have no sense of responsibility and they don't know what journalism is. They got away with the cricket, so they thought that they would make a whole lot of money and become famous and claim that they can, with the strength of their great exposés, knock off governments and very powerful people.
Tehelka first shot to prominence in May 2000 when it launched its expose of match fixing and cricket, Fallen Heroes. Secretly filmed conversations with cricketers caused a worldwide sensation. In cricket-crazed India, Tehelka became a household name.
So we decided we would run a sting operation, and we found a lot of the big players and administrators happily singing about match fixing when they thought they were off camera. And that, for us, actually nailed the truth of match fixing. It led to 2 inquiries, it created a huge uproar, and I think it led to a global cleanup in cricket.
For its next trick, Tehelka turned its attention from cricket to the even murkier world of arms dealers and defence procurement. Once again, hidden cameras were put to devastating use.
It all started with Senior Section Officer Shashi Menon in the Ministry of Defence wanting to make some money from arms dealers. We at Tehelka.com floated a fictitious arms manufacturing company based in London called West End International.
The truth is, if you live in Delhi, each of us knows that all the fancy farmhouses, all the fancy Mercedes are owned by defense middlemen. So part of the whole thing was to crack this whole story open about defense deals and payoffs. And that's how the stories began to germinate, that let's give it a shot. This is this kind of holy cow, but we all know it's completely rotten. Let's see what we can come up with.
No, sir, your mind is there and with us. The mind, of course. Okay, no, that's it. Please.
A Tehelka journalist posing as an arms dealer set about hawking handheld thermal cameras to the Indian Army. He soon discovered that every favour has its price, anything upwards from a bottle of the best quality scotch.
If you're talking of bloody making a couple of crores of rupees, you can't give me bloody black label also. Isn't it? Let's be very clear about it.
True fact, sir.
Their initial contact was a clerk in the Ministry of Defence, who introduced them to a colonel, who introduced them to a lieutenant colonel, who introduced them to a brigadier, and so on. Every one of them on the take.
You have to create a network, and let me tell you, it has got, because the carrot at the other end is big for everybody. You need very deep pockets. Let's be very clear.
Yeah, that is understood.
Working undercover for 8 months, reporter Samuel Matthews secretly filmed serving and retired army officers, defence bureaucrats, middlemen and political functionaries.
Please, Mr. Samuel.
Somehow, despite several comical blunders, his cover wasn't blown.
There's a point at which Samuel Matthews asked, which bank does your company bank with? And he says, Thomas Cook. And there's another point where he's asked, where is your company headquartered in England? And he says, Manchester United. He just said the things that came to his mind and sounded plausible, And I mean, it's a miracle that he didn't say, my MD is David Beckham. I mean, and he would have probably got away with it.
It was here, in great secrecy, that Matthews' footage was kept. Anirudh Bahal was the journalist in charge of running Operation West End. A veteran of the match-fixing story, he'd never expected this investigation to go for so long or to reveal so much.
But when it started off, it was like any other story. I mean, probability of the story going anywhere was maybe 5%, 10%, and there were lots of things we could have done much better, but we didn't have that benefit. It's only the story grew incrementally in value over the months, and 3-4 months into it, I realized that, wow, this is going to be something. Yeah, this is the place where Matthew's meeting Bangaru Lakshman. This is the second meeting.
Bangaru Lakshman was president of the BJP, India's ruling party. Here he is filmed calmly accepting the equivalent of $4,000 in small bills. This is Tehelka's infamous money shot.
And here is the famous visual. He's taking it out from his briefcase where the hidden camera was, and he's showing the cash in front of the camera. Here's a small gift.
Small gift for the New Year party.
And Bangaru Lakshman first opens his drawer and accepts the wad of money and then puts it back in the drawer. Very nonchalantly, I must say.
So what time can I call my boss to here?
Bangaru Lakshman was just one of several senior political figures caught on camera accepting bribes from West End International. The most significant meeting, one that was later to have explosive consequences, was here at the official residence of the Defence Minister, George Fernandez.
There's Matthew and that's Jatli in George Fernandez's house. George Fernandez was then the Defence Minister of India. He still is now.
So
Jaya Jaitley and George Fernandez both belong to the Samta Party, which is part of the ruling coalition. Jaitley was party president and also happens to be Fernandez's partner. She's another about to accept cash.
Can I give to madam?
Yeah, he's handing over the packet containing the cash. Can I give it to madam? And he passes the packet to the person to the right of him, who was Gopal Kachirwal.
Jaitley had accepted 200,000 rupees or 2 lakhs, $8,000 from Tehelka's undercover reporter.
That's 2 lakhs. Both.
Thank you very much.
And I don't think anyone can even begin to undermine the quality of bravery that was involved in all this. I keep saying, had Samuel Matthew been caught out in the defense minister's house, wired up the way he was, I mean, they would have locked him up and thrown away the key. And we would have been able to do nothing about it. Stories that have a cut-off point are stories that can be managed, they can be handled. I mean, and what really worried me was this was a story that was going all the way to the top.
On March 13, 2001, Tehelka went public with its story. It created an uproar.
The opposition is scenting blood. It could have huge political repercussions, and the issue is going to dominate Parliament for the coming days.
Left-wing protesters tried to storm the Parliament. Jaya Jaitley and George Fernandez became objects of ridicule. Along with BJP President Bangaru Lakshman, they went on the attack.
I will demand in Parliament and outside that these people should immediately be arrested, because I have reasons to believe that they have undermined our national security.
And I do not promote anybody's interests. And whatever is done in this government is done for national interest.
I have not done any deal for any deals. Somebody who has offered money for my party's fund, I have just accepted it, passed on, and which is still pending in the
Within a few days, the BJP President, the Samta Party President and the Defence Minister were all forced to stand down.
To uphold the morale of the armed forces and to prevent further damage to our national defence, I have decided to resign from government.
Two years later, George Fernandez is back as Defence Minister, and Jaya Jaitley still has her office in his official residence.
Have you any permission for photography? Show me, please. Why?
Now, they claim that they came to do some surreptitious defense deal with me. Here's my workspace, which is shared by many other colleagues and many other people in this room. There are so many workstations. And how on earth would anybody be talking about secret matters like defense deals and bribery and corruption in an atmosphere like this? This has taken me 35 years of my experience working with the craftspeople of India in rural areas, and I wrote this.
Jaya Jaitley was not someone most Indians expected to see caught up in a scandal. Until Operation West End, she was known largely for her work in handicrafts. Her integrity had never been questioned.
I said, send it to somebody.
What was your reaction when you first saw the footage of the meeting?
I was astounded because I didn't recollect it even for a moment. And I said, well, it must have happened because I'm there and I can recognize my voice. But, for instance, they say that they said 2 lakhs of rupees. And they've stuck this 2 lakhs in there. And I have still insisted
They've stuck it in there, meaning?
Superimposed, recorded it later. They never announced any amount of money in front of me. No money was discussed at all.
Okay.
The National Council elects the National President.
Okay.
In fact, Tehelka's footage clearly shows Jaitley thanking West End for its donation, explaining that the money would help meet expenses at an upcoming party conference.
So that process... because he said, look, I can do 50% expense, you do the rest. So the rest, whatever contribution, we can manage, we can.
We need your blessing. blessing. We need your blessing also for this, our company.
So this is someone that came in without an appointment, being introduced to you by someone that you barely knew. You weren't at all surprised that he wanted to give a donation to the party.
I said, oh, which is a surprise, expression of surprise. But I don't say, oh my gosh, how on earth? You know, I mean, that's silly. Yeah, I said, oh.
Jaitley says there's no evidence in the tapes of any wrongdoing by anyone. She's launched a personal crusade against the journalists who she believes were out to get her.
They call it investigative journalism. It's the furthest possible from the truth. They have taken a hypothesis and gone out to prove it. They have decided that there is corruption in defense procurement and decided that they must now set about talking to people who were not connected with it. I think if you read the whole 100 hours of tape, then you will realize that the conversation was a perfectly ordinary, perfectly superficial, and not at all secret. The information...
In every case?
In every case.
Tehelka's tapes angered many powerful people who were determined to get even. It didn't take long for the government to strike back, hard. Tavleen Singh is a leading columnist and political commentator, and at the time of the expose she was a friend of the ruling BJP. Singh was one of many journalists the government tried to use to attack Tehelka.
You know, I had no doubt that what we saw was true. But pretty soon after the story broke, within maybe a week of it breaking, I met senior cabinet ministers in Delhi, who started to say things that made me quite suspicious of what had really gone on. You know, because it was coming at such a high level in government, I believed them when they said that there were all kinds of surreptitious undercurrents in the story.
The government accused Tehelka of being part of all kinds of wild conspiracies. One minute the website was called a stooge of the opposition Congress Party. The next it was supposedly destabilising the government on behalf of Pakistani intelligence.
I mean, there wasn't any charge that wasn't flung on us. I mean, I think very, very early, some elements in the party took a conscious decision that the thing to do was just try and trash Tehelka as quickly and as soundly as possible. So we faced a terrible propaganda war, and it was actually very, very upsetting and galling to be constantly fending off wild charges.
Rocked by bribery and corruption exposed on the Tehelka videotapes, losing a defense minister and two party presidents, the establishment begins to fight back. And according to the Tehelka team, the government and its machinery is using every possible means to discredit Tehelka.
We find that there is a concerted slander campaign being launched against Tehelka.com and the three of us.
Just as the Tehelka storm seemed to have died down, headlines in today's newspapers have revived the debate.
Some of Tehelka's methods had left the website open to criticism. When Jaya Jaitley's party discovered Tehelka had used prostitutes to entertain army officers, it had a scandal of its own to leak to the press.
But Tehelka's chief says that he has done nothing wrong. He insists that the demand for prostitutes was initiated by the army officers and not by Tehelka.
They were being forced to do this to carry the investigation on, because obviously in arms deals, these are the kind of things these guys are used to asking for and demanding and getting.
The government did set up an inquiry headed by a retired judge to investigate the allegations of corruption. But one of its 4 terms of reference called for an investigation of all aspects relating to the making and publication of the allegations. In other words, Tehelka. In an incredible turnaround, the inquiry ended up investigating the messenger rather than the message. For the next 18 months, all of Tehelka's remaining resources were spent defending every word in the more than 100 hours of footage it had collected.
The only way the system could salvage some honor out of the story was by discrediting us, by impugning some motives to us. I mean, nobody asked Bob Woodward whether his mother was a Democratic sympathizer or what his motives were in doing Watergate. I mean, it's simply taken for granted. Nobody really goes after the motives. I mean, you question the facts that your story brings out, but I mean, that's where your focus should be. Nobody was bothered about the facts, and they were gunning for us.
In the shadow of the Bombay Stock Exchange are two bystanders who bore the full brunt of the government's fury.
I can tell you there have been days of pure panic and pure terror, and it's not to exaggerate it, but every time somebody has knocked on the door or rung the doorbell, we have been thrown into a real dizzy. So it's been very, very, very stressful personally. It's almost like somebody just let loose a pack of dogs on you and you just had to fend them off whichever way you could.
Shankar Sharma and Davina Mehra run First Global, once one of Bombay's leading investment banks and the only South Asian company to be listed on the London Stock Exchange.
What is Stock?
They provided Tehelka with nearly $1 million in startup investment.
We are from the investment world. Our job is to invest.
Within days of the scandal breaking, newspapers were reporting rumours that Operation West End had been part of a conspiracy to crash the stock market. Shankar and Davina soon felt the full weight of the Indian bureaucracy bearing down on them as government agencies launched close to 24 raids on their offices and home.
Just a raid is not really the issue here. I mean, people came here not to find out if there was anything wrong or anything to hide. They came here to invent. And, they will walk onto your kitchen, your home accounts, and they will say these are all code-named, code worded. So if you have 4 dozen mangoes, they will say, okay, these are unaccounted payments being codified and, being called mangoes. So it's in hindsight it's very funny, but when it's happening you feel like beating those guys up.
Sharma has also been presented with 250 legal summonses. His passport was seized and he was arrested and charged under an act that had been repealed 2 years before.
You just arrested, you're put behind bars, and then you get bail after 2.5-3 months. My bail was rejected multiple times. And they used to shout in court, Your Honor, this man is a serious criminal, and he will tamper with evidence, and he will kill the witnesses, and he will use strong arm tactics, and that's my first offense, by the way. I never even had a parking ticket in my life.
At one point, the Solicitor General himself appeared in court to oppose Sharma's bail application.
See, privately, every single government official has said, hey, look, we know what we're doing is wrong, but I'm sorry, there are orders from Delhi. The topmost officials of the country, the topmost ministers of the government are calling us up and saying that you have to find something, if not frame something, fabricate something, do something, got to get this guy in.
I mean, they even use the words that we are only puppets, somebody else is pulling the strings, I'm just signing the order, I have nothing to do with it.
And we hope that God forgives us. And as I tell them, I hope God doesn't.
Most of the conspiracy theories the government has spread about Tehelka defy any kind of logic. But nothing, it seems, is too far-fetched for the former Samta Party president to believe.
And I truly believe that Tehelka has been used by mercenaries for such people. Because it's not Shankar Sharma who's given them the money, it's come from elsewhere.
Sorry?
The money has not come from Shankar Sharma.
the money, the investment into Tehelka.
That's right. It has come from Mauritius, and it came into their Mauritius account from a person in Madras. All this has come in the affidavit of the government.
For what purpose?
Well, I don't know, to sabotage the government, sabotage the ministry, sabotage George Fernandez, and to use me as a puppet or a pawn in this.
I think Jaya has just completely run amok. I think, in my own kind of distant way, I don't know Jaya at all, but I've seen the way she's reacted. I've seen the kind of dishonesties she's voiced in public again and again and again. And I know many of her friends who really worry for her and the kind of things she says and does these days. I think Jaya's problem really is, the way I see it, is that she's no longer the person she thinks she is, you know. And when the gap between who you are and who you think you are becomes so wide, I think you just keep falling through it. And Jaya is someone who keeps falling through that gap all the time.
How do you explain the government reaction? The level of vindictiveness involved?
Well, the only explanation I can come up with is that somebody very high up in government was really upset by the Tehelka story. The obvious person is George Fernandez, because he lost his job, and Jaya Jaitley was one of the people seen taking money, and here were these sort of the Mother Teresas of Indian politics, being exposed in this way. But I think it could be higher up, I hesitate to mention names, but maybe there's somebody in the Prime Minister's office who got very upset because the Prime Minister's son-in-law was mentioned by people on these tapes.
In a curious way, what has happened post the story is a far bigger story than the story itself. That tells us more about the Indian state and India than the story itself. I mean, the story took 8 months. It's been 20 months of dealing with the fallout of the story, So the blast was wonderful, but the radiation has been far more devastating. I mean, it's carried on, it's still carrying on.
Tehelka's editor hopes he doesn't have to wait for a change of government to revive his website. In the next couple of months, he's planning to launch a subscription service to exploit what is still one of the best-known media brands in India. Despite 2 years of vilification, Tehelka has become a byword for the fight against corruption.
A friend of mine sent me an email from Bangalore, and she overheard 2 women labourers who were digging the road talking about Tehelka. And so she stopped by on the street to listen to what one woman was telling the other. And she was explaining what Tehelka is to the other woman, and she was said that Tehelka is this big electronic machine that they have made in Delhi. And if you stand in front of it, the machine will tell you how much corruption you have done. And for me, that's the most sweetest and best compliment that I could ever get for a story. My friend of